So welcome everybody. A very small group today, and it looks like everyone's busy with Christmas and all kinds of other things. But just like to welcome those here who are here, and especially Francesca Paoletti, who is our workshop leader for tonight, based in Germany, and Francesca is an environmental engineer. Working on renewable energy and other things, but also especially tonight, wanted to look with us at how do we overcome the barriers, the obstacles for people to thinking about and acting in the way that we need to think and act to respond adequately to the crisis that we're facing. So really delighted to have you with us, Francesca. And we're in your hands, so I hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. And thank you both, David and Rowena, for hosting this. It's an honor for me to be here, and I don't mind talking to a small group because for me the most important thing is the motivation. So in this sense, many thanks for being here. And I would like to start with a very brief meditation to establish our motivation. So I would kindly invite you to take a comfortable position for the next couple of minutes and we will do this in order to settle ourselves into a natural state. We start by settling our body in a natural state, which means we try and sit comfortably and let go of any tension that are in our body. Just try to be relaxed and aware of the present moment. Then as a next step, we settle our speech in its natural state. This means we just allow our breath to flow freely without any hindrance. We take 1 or 2 deep breaths if we want. And then just let our breathing flow in its own rhythm without interfering. And as a third step, we will settle our mind in its natural state by letting go of any unnecessary thoughts and mental chatter, just allowing ourselves to dwell in this present moment. And let's remain in this state, in this natural state, which is relaxed, aware, and feel the presence of the other persons that are with us here in discussion in the virtual room around us. Let's develop a sense of appreciation for being here together this evening to reflect on our contribution to sustainability and environment. Let's develop a positive motivation for our being together this evening. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I don't have a bell, and anyway, I'm afraid that with this echoing in the room at present, it would be quite a nightmare for you if I would ring a bell. Thank you for joining this few moments. We will have more meditation later on in the course of the evening. So let me start by saying something about myself, why I'm interested in this topic of sustainability. So my personal journey and exploration of this topic started with my own background as an environmental engineer. So I spent many years working in a corporate business setting. And all this time as an engineer in a corporate business setting, I had a deep belief that technology would solve all our problems without the need for us to change anything. Or somehow all our problems with environment, sustainability, climate change were solved by themselves, just by means of technology, without the need for us to question anything about our way of living. And this perspective, which was clearly flawed, I reckon now, started changing 10 years ago in parallel to my Dharma practice. I've been practicing Buddhism since about 10 years. And my Dharma practice brought me to reconsider the way I think about myself, the world, and other beings. And this really brought on the need to reconsider the way I was also looking about my profession and my working environment. And after many years of working with energy companies, I reached the conclusion that within this corporate model that we have at present, we will never really reach rapid decarbonization, which we actually urgently need to do. And now at present, I work with renewable energy communities. So they are cooperatives of citizens that own their own energy resources, mainly solar power, and share them among them. So there is a concept of community energy and sharing the energy. So it's a totally different perspective to energy and in general to sustainability. And this is what led me to think differently about sustainability, about the need to take action regarding climate change and sustainability, because nothing would ever change if we don't take action ourselves. I will say more about today, later on. And while I was doing my studies of the basic program, I always felt the need, okay, how can I contribute to the topic with my Dharma background to the topic of sustainability? Then I always felt there are teachers, like great teacher like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who are way more qualified than me, and I'm very committed to this topic. So I spent a lot of time thinking, is there anything that I can say that these teachers have not been saying already in a way more powerful and effective way than I could ever do? So this created a sort of a problem for me. And then I realized I need to have a different approach, which is what I will do tonight. So I will not start with Dharma teachings and then finding what are the ecologically relevant points in them, but rather the other way around. I will start from the Western scientific perspective. I will start from our perspective as Western industrial societies. And from there, I will come to the conclusions of what is our need for actions as engaged Buddhists. And you will see that I will point out two paths of actions: our individual path of action and our global path of action. I will say more later on, but this is just to say that I will approach the topic at the beginning from a very scientific and Western point of view, and then move on in the course of the talk into more Dharma-oriented aspects. So I will start. So the first point is, why am I talking about sustainability? I mean, nowadays everyone talks about climate crisis. So why talk about sustainability? And for me, the important aspect of sustainability is that sustainability is based on three pillars: the social pillar, the environmental pillar, and the economic pillar. So sustainability is really the intersection of these three aspects. And this has become very clear ever since the late 80s and early 90s with the Brundtland Commission led by Norwegian Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland, who started working on the new concept of sustainability. Because of course, the concept of sustainability is nothing new. I mean, it's been around for centuries, and it originally implied not using up more resources that can be regenerated by the natural environment. But the new aspect that was brought in 1987 by the Brundtland Commission with the report Our Common Future was the inclusion of future generations. So the definition that was given by the Brundtland Commission of sustainability is sustainable development is a development that meets the needs of the present generations without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So the key aspect is considering the needs of the present and of the future generations to create an intergenerational framework. And I think this is important now more than ever. It has not in any way lost its importance since the 90s. Actually, it's becoming more and more urgent to close this gap that is opening between generations. And the other aspect is that the focus needs to be not just on environmental protection, but also on social inclusivity and sustainable economic growth. So really to link these three aspects, the environment, the social aspect, and the economic aspect. And in this respect, the United Nations have picked up this message from the Brundtland Commission and first developed their Millennium Goals in the year 2000 for the new millennium, and then later also developed the 17 I see the message. Thank you, David. I think now you should be able to see my whole face. Thank you. So what the United Nations did is that they developed the 17 sustainable goals, and I will share my screen now so that you can see what these goals are. You should be able now to see them. There is a poster, and so can you see it? So there are the 17 sustainable goals, which reach from no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality of education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation. I can send you the link, the attachment if you wish. So you can see that clean energy and climate and the response to climate crisis are parts of the 17 development goals, but the 17 development goals are more than that. So the view of sustainability is very broad and addresses many topics which are obviously related with each other, but not precisely the same. And the United Nations has started a great deal of initiatives to tackle these goals. And the importance of these goals is they serve as references for the governments in planning their action towards sustainable development. And yes, and there is a lot of resources that I can give you if you want, but basically this is the direction that the United Nations have chosen to follow for and which is our understanding of what is sustainable development. But because I come from the energy sector, I will move again. It would take a lot of time to go into all 17 of them. I will move again into a sector of energy and address the topic of decarbonization. I mean, we have, of course, the climate crisis is becoming more and more evident and more energy urgent. And in this respect, we need, as industrialized societies, to find a way to address the topic of how to decarbonize our societies. And on this, there is a book that I would very much recommend to you. Can you see it? The cover? I think you should be able to see it now. So it's called Carbon, Civilization and the Descent and the Energy Descent Future, Life Beyond This Brief Anomaly. Sam Alexander and Geoffrey Floyd. The book is very interesting. It's a small book I can very much recommend. And it makes a point about the connection between energy and the level of specialization of societies in the course of the human evolution. And it's very interesting from a historic point of view, but the point is that our use of carbon and fossil fuels is nothing than a brief anomaly in the history of humankind. So we've been using fossil fuels for 2 centuries, which is nothing compared to the history of humankind. And this brief anomaly will have to end very soon. So we will have to find strategies very quickly to decarbonize our societies. and we will have no choice. And not just because of the climate change, but really because the fossil resources are limited and they're going to be depleted very soon. So climate change gives us really the kick that we needed to really get ourselves going, but we need to decarbonize our societies anyway. And the problem is that our industrial societies are not prepared for that. We have been wasting a lot of time, and we have a whole industry infrastructure which is not prepared to shift to our decarbonized society. And even if we follow the illusion of saying, okay, we just replace 100% fossil fuels with renewable energy sources, we'll have solar, wind, and water, and everything will remain as it is. Again, this will not be feasible because the renewable energy sources will not offer sufficient energy density. This is a very technical aspect, but anyway, they will not be able to replace completely our use of fossil fuels. So we will not have any other choice but to reduce significantly our use of energy as societies. And this will mean nothing else that we will have to follow a path of significant deindustrialization and deep growth. And we will have to learn to focus on activities that are less energy intensive, can be run with 100% renewable energy sources, which will mean strong focus on electrification, strong development of solar and wind power. And basically, the point is that the only alternative we have to a complete collapse of our societies, because this is what we are heading to with our present climate situation, the only alternative to that is a voluntary simplification and a reduction of the energy use in order to focus on activities that are based on sufficiency, lesser use of resources, and which are based on the ideas of reusing, recycling, repairing, using way less energy resources than we do now. And in this way, we have the chance to follow a pathway. They call it a prosperous descent. So that doesn't have to be the end of our Western civilization as we know it. But it will be complete change. Just like starting using fossil fuels has been a complete change compared to whatever we did before. So we will have to face a very strong and radical shift in our use of energy in the very near future. And basically, that we need to change our society. Again, this is not something new. I mean, the other book that I would like to reference is The Limits to Growth. This is a book that was written in 1972, commissioned by the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome was an association of economists. So these were not hippies. This was not some ecological hippie club in the 70s that commissioned this book. This was a group of economists from university and corporate environment that commissioned a simulation from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and said, what will happen to Earth if we continue our growth in population and use of resources as we do now? So the result of the simulation, they're very clear, saying that our industrial output will peak around 2008, and then will followed by a rapid decline. Our food availability per each person, so the amount of global food that we have available, will peak around 2020, this year, and then followed by the rapid decline. The amount of services available will also peak around 2020, and then will reach a rapid decline. And global population will rapidly decline following 2030. And in 1972, when this text was composed, the author still left open the possibility that we could alter our growth trends in order to sustain an ecological use of resources. Already nearly 50 years ago, they said the sooner we start, the better is the chance to achieve this path of sustainability. Now, what happened a year later is that this simulation was revisited by scientists of the MIT, and they revisited already in 92, then 20 years later. And already in 1992, they found that There was no longer room for societies and economies to grow safely. So already in 92, they started sounding alarm bells saying, look, our room for growing sustainably is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And nothing happened. So in 2004, there was a 30-year update of this limits to growth. In 2012, there was another revision of the text. And again, the conclusion was we're doing less and less. So we really need to change our course of action and reconsider our economic model based on continuous growth, because this will not be sustainable. It will lead us in a catastrophe. And again, just like in the previous book that I mentioned about the carbonization of society, we have the choice whether to go on like this and run into collapse, or voluntarily question our economic model and our use of resources. And by the way, sustainable development, this can be achieved, and it does not mean zero growth. It means focusing on a different type of activities. It means focusing on sufficiency. It means focusing on security and stability for all. So it also means questioning our distribution, patterns of distribution of resources. So moving toward an equitable distribution of resources. And also, it doesn't mean we will be in a sort of a communist state that rules and regulates everything. Rather the opposite, a sustainable the society would preserve freedom and give individuals autonomy in how they use energy. I mean, the best example is the energy communities that I work with every day. They are building up their own energy resources and owning and sharing among themselves their energy resources. So there's not the need of having a big state regulating everything. So there is a lot of room for individual creativity and ways to find ways of living sustainable for individuals. But we will have to rethink the way we live now, the way we use our resources, especially in our industrialized societies, which are no longer all in the West. I mean, again, the narrative that not all industrial societies are in the West. We have big emerging countries in Asia, just think of China and India, that we all will have to rethink our consumption patterns for the sake of our global environment. So this is why I think it's important, and this is the conclusion of my first part of the talk. It's important to be aware that we are facing a huge challenge. There is a big challenge ahead of us as humanity, because we will have to really rethink many of our habits and many of our ways we use energy. But the stakes are very high. I mean, if we don't act now, we will face collapse very, very soon. And we're seeing it already. The symptoms are everywhere. This is important also to be aware that it's not that we can sit comfortably and think, okay, someone will solve the problem for us, or with just a few technology adaptations, we will solve the problems. We will have to change the way I live. So before we move on, do you have questions on this part? I mean, I planned enough time for discussion later, but if you have some questions that you would like to ask right now, please go ahead.
Just an observation, really. Yeah, and the original limits to growth report, there was very clear, we're not making predictions, but we're just giving alternative scenarios. So this is the scenario of business as usual, and then there are these other scenarios. And then in the 20-year update, they said, well, we're not making predictions, we're just giving scenarios. But so far, the scenario has been business as usual, and this is leading us to catastrophe. And then in the 30-year update, they said the same thing again. And in the 40-year update, they didn't say that. There was only one of them left, actually. One of the original team left, Jürgen Randers, who wrote the report. And he said, I am not saying that we're not making predictions, we're only giving scenarios. This is my predictions because for 40 years, we've been going along the business as usual. And this is what will happen now. And their prediction is really, I mean, he made a 40-year projection to 2052, and he said basically at that point, the world is going to be in absolutely critical condition. The model runs out at that point. It's impossible, the model cannot predict further than that, but it's predicting we're going on business as usual. And but actually he also said that the ecological consciousness is rising, and by that time it will be universal. Everyone will understand that ecology has the priority over economy. But by that time, whether there's any chance to rescue the situation is uncertain. So what we're up against, it just seems to me, a lot of people are talking now about not just the possibility of collapse, but the inevitability of collapse.
Yeah.
Or at least our present industrial civilization, it is already collapsing. There's a big conversation about, we're not talking about making this system sustainable. We're talking about how we're going to adapt to the collapse that is coming. And of course, collapse can be understood in different ways. There can be more positive and more negative ways. It may not be just absolute total catastrophe, human extinction, but it's going to be so different from anything that we have seen. And I think it's coming in the very near future. Very near.
Things can, I mean, we've all seen it this year with the pandemic. I mean, things can change so quickly without any warning. And look at the fires in California or in Australia. I mean, those people would have never thought that they would lose everything at a fire. I mean, so things can change much more quickly than we think. And I think it's important to be prepared. And I think it's important to be prepared that at the society level, there will be a lot of resistance to change, because it's part of human nature to reject change, and especially if this change is associated with fear. There will be a lot of rejection and resistance. You can already see what happens with the measures against the pandemic, how much resistance there is there, and it will be even more with climate change. But nonetheless, I think it's important that we focus on what we can do as Buddhists or as engaged citizens for our own well-being. And this is what I would like to focus on in the next part. So if you don't have any other questions or points, I would move on. And for me, the path is, the point is now, okay, so how do we deal with that? So what do we do? And my approach was, because this was meant to be also a presentation in a Buddhist context, so I'm referring specifically to Buddhist terminology and context. I got inspired from the idea of the various scopes that we have in the Lamrim. So we have the initial and the medium scope and the big great scope. So the first part of our action, I called it our individual path. And that's the path of developing ecological intelligence. This way we can increase our ecological intelligence and find ways that are good for us as individuals to cope with the present crisis. In the next step, I will talk about how we address the things from a global perspective, so to say, the Mahayana perspective that involves all beings. But first, let's start with our individual path, because anyway, even in the Buddhist path, we first have to get on the path of renunciation and understanding what it means for us to be free from suffering. And against this climate change crisis, there's nothing else. There's a lot of suffering ahead of us. So we need to figure out, first of all, also individual solutions to this suffering. And for this, I would like again to share my screen and by showing a video. So I'm very curious to see if this will work with
We are now 21st century. Time always moving. With new time, new reality there. So we have to accept the new reality. Facing new reality, but our perception is old thinking. Then you see, I think a lot of problem, unnecessary problem, you see, happen. So we must act according new reality. Otherwise, you see, there's a gap, our perception and the reality gap. So then all our efforts become unrealistic. So therefore, I think now serious interest about global warming or environment issue, I think now this is a hopeful sign. Now, I think the taking care about our only home, this planet, is not just government's responsibility. All humanity, all individuals have the responsibility. And then I always telling the war, bloodshed, immediately striking in our mind. But the damaging the ecology or these global sort of the warming, these things, without much sort of obvious, but invisibly, you see, month by month, decaying. So once we feel some difficulties to breathing, difficulties to eyes, and particularly children, then maybe too late. So therefore, this is something very serious, and then each of us, 7 billion human beings, taking care about global these global issues should be part of our life. So in our daily life, always keep some sort of serious sort of thinking. If I do this, it eventually some effect. So if I do one single person, then other 10 people, 100 people, 100,000, then so change start from individual. Then you see effect come.
Yes, so His Holiness, a wonderful teacher and a huge source of inspiration. And it's really amazing the work he's been doing for environmental commitment. But he's encouraging to start with ourselves, to start really changing our own habits. And in this respect, what my approach that I'm suggesting this evening is based on the approach by Daniel Goleman. So Daniel Goleman is a psychologist that you may be familiar with for his works on emotional intelligence. And in 2009, he wrote a book called Ecological Intelligence. So his point there is that we need not just emotional intelligence, but 3 types of intelligence. So emotional intelligence is the first and is the innermost type of intelligence that we need, because this regulates all our internal emotional process. The second level is social intelligence. He wrote a book on that as well, which shows us how we support and nourish ourselves as communities. How do we act successfully within communities? And successfully, by this I mean not that we as individuals are successful over others, but the entire community is successful as a group. And the third type of intelligence that we need is ecological intelligence, which means that we know how to support and nourish ourselves as a species that is reliant on the integrity of the planet in order to survive. So ecological intelligence is our ability to adapt to our ecological niche. And we have to be honest that we have been doing very poorly at that in the last couple of centuries. But the point is that ecological intelligence lets us apply our knowledge. We have so much technical knowledge in industrialized societies. There's so much knowledge, and we have to apply this knowledge to find ways in order to live sustainably in our ecological niche and do less harms to the other beings that we share it with. And it's not just a matter of cognitive knowledge. This is a point that's very important for Daniel Goleman. It's a deep form of experiential knowing. Needless to say that meditation plays a key role in the work of Daniel Goleman and in his personal experience. We really have to reach this deeper form of experiential knowing so that we really feel the relationship that we have in the earth and in all beings that are in it. There's a very beautiful image that Daniel Goleman uses in his book. That's the image of Indra's net. The net of Indra is used in some Buddhist sutras and is a sort of universal net that expands throughout the whole universe. In every mesh of the grid, there is a diamond, and they are faceted in a way that every point of the grid of the net reflects all others. And this is the image that Daniel Goleman chooses to show our interconnection. So at any point, every one of us reflects all other beings in the same system. And this is really the feeling that we need to develop, this relationship that we have to the earth and with each other as beings that live in it. But what does it mean precisely? I mean, the ecological intelligence has a lot to do with our daily choices as consumers. And Daniel Goleman points out the aspect of vital lies and self-deception. So vital lies is a term that he uses to indicate the comforting stories that we tell ourselves to hide a more painful truth. So vital lies prevent us from seeing the impact of our consumer choices. Basically, there are 4 attentional rules that Daniel Goleman points out. So when we see a product, the first thing is what we notice in this product. And when we see a product, in general, what we notice is largely what is our benefit, what is the benefit for us, which would most likely be in terms of price and value of a product. Then, how do we name it? We find it attractive, we say, oh, that's a bargain. We find it a really good bargain, good price, good value, fine, go ahead. But then this leaves out a huge point of what we don't notice. So while we notice the benefit there is in the product for us, we don't notice the hidden cost of a product to our planet and to the people in the planet. And we also have ways to call this what we don't notice. We try to find stories to keep our blind spot hidden. So in a way, deep inside ourselves, we know we have a blind spot, and we try more or less consciously to cover it up by telling a story like, oh, it's just greenwashing, only price matters, anyway, they're all cheating, so I'll just as well take the cheapest product, no matter what the impact on the environment is. So this dynamic of telling vital lies and self-deception that we apply explains to us why so many harmful products go unpunished in the markets. So the buyers do not punish harmful product. And on the other side, virtuous products go unrewarded because we have our set of ideas of what we think is good. But then when we go to pay at the counter, in the end, the self-deception comes in. We want to keep our blind spot. And this is an essential aspect in our work to develop ecological intelligence. And I very much encourage you to read the book by Dan Goleman, if you haven't done already, to identify these topics. But then this leads us to a question, okay, what can we do specifically as individuals? What is our range of action? And basically the point is, every day with any buying choice that we make, we are making a decision for the planet, for the environment, for our living system. So our individual path starts with asking ourselves, how many material things do we need to be happy? How many products do we need to buy? Do we really need to buy new products? Or maybe are we able to find ways to repair existing products? There is a lot of repair initiatives that are popping up everywhere around us. Maybe it would be worth to spend time to look out for any of these before we buy something new. Where does true happiness and fulfillment come from? So that's the first point. It's a very individual question, which will have very individual answers. And then again, to measure the level of our interconnectedness with others, that would be the second step. Check our footprint. There is a lot of CO2 footprint calculators available in the internet that allow us to estimate our impact on the environment. So why not use that? Why not estimate what are the aspects that where we have the strongest footprint? And again, this is a very individual aspect. Some of us might find out that they, for example, people that are vegan, they will have a very little footprint in terms of food, but maybe they have a lot of flights and travel a lot. So yeah, on the other side, they have a big footprint in terms of mobility. So it's important to know what are the points where we have a potential for improvement and to evaluate realistically where can we make changes. And again, here it's important to be honest with ourselves and to figure out maybe where we have self-deception getting in our way, like saying, oh, no, there's no way I can renounce eating meat. This is a story that I've been telling myself for years, because I've been eating meat for many, many years. And there was plenty of stories I was telling myself why it was not possible for me to give up on eating meat. But now, basically, I live meat-free and I'm very healthy, very happy. But I had to find out that there was a lot of self-deception going on and accept this first. So it's important to be kind with ourselves, not to beat ourselves up, to identify the self-deception without beating us up by maintaining kindness towards ourselves. And at the same time, also be realistic in our possibility of changing, knowing where we can take action and where it's more difficult. For example, my family lives very far away from me, my parents. So until very recently, I had to rely on planes to see them, because otherwise this would have been implied being on a train for 16 hours, single way. So then I thought, okay, I know that this is a weak spot in my footprint because I fly a lot. But then I try to compensate with other things. I don't drive a car. I walk to the office. I try to walk to work. So every one of us is really invited to find their own recipe and being realistic in what we can change, because really changing our habits takes time. But then the other thing is, whenever we do buy something, we have to demand transparency. We really have to ask from companies to deliver on their on their promise. So it's not that just we have to do the work ourselves, but we are also entitled to expect actions from others. So when we buy a product, we should check, does the company deliver in terms of sustainability? And that means delivering in terms of ecological balance. What is the ecological balance of their product? But also in terms of social responsibility. Do they have a fair employment policy? Do they respect diversity and equality? Do they implement fairness to all generations and to their suppliers and subcontractors? What is their economic capability? How do they implement product design? How do they do their procurement? Do they have sustainable procurement? Do they have compliance rules that they apply, or an ethical code that they apply to? And do they really act upon it? And the good thing is that in the age of internet, we have plenty of information on companies. So I think there is a big incentive for companies to really comply with these rules, because otherwise the consequences will be huge and will be very visible very quickly. So we have to take advantage of the information that is available. And the same goes for society. We vote governments, so we should go vote in governments and judge them by their ability to develop frameworks for energy transition, for climate protection. So it's not that we have to work on our habit, but also we have to use our areas of influence as consumers and as voting citizens. So we do have a lot of areas of influence. And with this, I would like to open up the first discussion. So I guess we won't have breakout rooms. So we will have a small discussion group, the four of us. And I had prepared some questions to discuss. And the first question is, I can share it so you can see it in the screen. Maybe it's easier if I share the screen, and then good. Yeah, so the first question is, what is currently my individual contribution for a sustainable and decarbonized world? Where could I go further? What prevents me from doing so, and what would help? And my idea is this: maybe in the round, everyone says something for a couple of minutes, so that we have about less than 10 minutes as a whole. So who wants to go first?
Nobody ever wants to go first.
That's always the same, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I don't mind going first.
Oh, great.
Okay.
I'll volunteer.
Thank you.
Well done.
Okay, so just whipping through currently my individual contribution. So using the car as little as possible, using my bike as much as I can. Haven't been on a plane for ages. I don't really use any plastic as far as my cosmetic products are concerned. So like wash my hair in chickpea flour and use soap, soap rather than plastic bottles. So all of that, I found that's been reasonably easy. I buy mostly secondhand clothes. I really struggle with plastic from food products. So I go to the market and try and do that, but I do struggle a lot with trying to reduce packaging for food products, particularly for my children, packed lunches, and trying to feed them healthily, when they don't necessarily want to eat the food that's in season. They want strawberries and blue, I really find that difficult, and struggle to know what further steps I could make particularly around my children, so they see that I hardly buy any clothes other than in charity shops and stuff like that, but they still want to buy theirs in new look and all of that, and I understand, they're young, they want to look fashionable, and so I really do find that difficult. So that's one of the things that prevents me from moving further with that, is like getting the balance with trying to let my children make their own decisions, and fit in. Their mental health is important as well, isn't it? So yeah, and the other thing which prevents me from doing things is the vast amount of information out there. We could just spend all day, every day, looking up what we need. So, for example, I haven't stopped eating meat. I have decreased massively. But one of the things that sort of worries me is that, oh, okay, so let's say I stop buying some meat and replace it with something worse, like, I stumbled on some information about avocado farming, and so like everything just becomes this minefield where you're constantly needing to look everything up, and I don't have the time, neither do I want to be on the computer all day doing that. So that's the other thing that prevents me from moving forward. There we go.
Thank you. Yeah,
Shall I
I
go?
very much relate to most of it.
Yeah. I mean, I really resonate with that, and I think it shows that we can't consider the individual contribution and the societal contribution separately. It cannot be done by individuals alone, and we're up against it. And Francesca, you said that virtuous products don't get rewarded in the marketplace. I think they do, and I think that's how commercial thinking says, oh well, we'll offer the people who are ecologically minded, we'll offer them an ecological product, and the people who are unecologically minded, we'll offer them an unecological product. And that's the commercial thinking. And of course, that's not going to help. So that's a perception, is that there's always going to be the green people and the not so green people, and we cater for all of their needs. But what we need is the society to go green. So for example, I mean, I went on the WWF carbon calculator website the other week, and so I don't have a car. I cheated slightly. I said that I never fly. It's not quite true. I do sometimes take a short haul flight, about one every 2 years. I have a long haul flight about every 20 years, but anyway, I put in 0. And I put in that I don't travel on trains because I hardly ever do that either. I'm vegan. I have all renewable electricity. My gas is offset. I have solar panels. I grow some of my own food. I buy as much local food as possible. My carbon footprint was 9.8 tons, according to WWF. And I thought, oh, where's that coming from? And I was speaking with a friend the other day, and he said, oh, well, some of these carbon calculators, they put in a factor for infrastructure. So if there are, 9 tons of carbon infrastructure supporting me, and I have a 0.8 tons footprint myself, then my footprint is 10 tons, which is several times what the world can sustain, 3 or 4 times as much as the world can sustain. So, that just underlines my point that I feel I'm doing as much reasonably as I can. I could do more, and it would take a lot of time and effort and energy to just shave a little bit more off my personal footprint. But my problem is what I'm preoccupied with is the collective footprint and how we can change the thinking and how we can change the structures in the society and how we can get from the being, just this minority of people who are green-minded to the fact that the whole society needs to think differently. That's my struggle. I now have one big problem with my personal carbon footprint, which is I have a cat. Well, I have 2 cats actually, but one of them is fed by somebody else for various reasons. So I only really have responsibility for my cat's footprint, but of course my cat is not vegan. I mean, not only that, but cat food is probably, much less ecologically friendly even than meat that you would buy for humans. So that's a little bit of a worry. Don't know what to do about that. I think there is a vegetarian and vegan cat food. It does exist. Years ago, we kind of tried it and it didn't work, but maybe there's better stuff now. Perhaps I should look into that. But yeah.
Do let us know if you succeed, because I know especially many Buddhists who have cats and try to convert their cats to vegetarian, and it is apparently possible to convert dogs into vegetarians. There is some dog species that can cope with vegetarian food, but with cats, I always heard that they drove people into despair. Wow, thank you. But you're setting an incredibly high benchmark for us, David. So you're making life hard for us.
I mean, I mean, honestly, I share with you, Francesca. It's like I stopped eating meat many years ago for 7 years on the spot. I looked out of the window and there was a cow. And I thought, I can't do this anymore. And so for 7 years, I was vegetarian. And then I actually went back to eating meat because on the advice of a Buddhist nun, because I was experiencing certain problems with my meditation. They said, well, this is the only thing you can do. Apparently, it's not the only thing, but that is, almost the only thing. We have a lung, this sort of particular problem that happens with the energy winds when you have meditation. It's usually said you have to go back to eating meat. So I went through quite a long, up and down and in and out. And I had a child, and my partner, who was also Buddhist but was German. So she'd been brought up on 3 meat meals a day, and she couldn't eat. She hated cheese, and eggs disagreed with her, and she didn't like beans. So it became impossible. So I was cooking 3 different meals every day, and I caved in and started eating meat again. But then finally I became vegan about 2 years ago, and I think,
wow,
absolutely no problem at all. Why did I ever think it was a problem?
Wonderful.
Yeah, but it's probably because I've transitioned fairly slowly from a mostly vegetarian diet to a completely vegan diet. I think it's not so good to try and do it overnight, but it really is. I would never dream of going back to eating meat. Don't miss it in the slightest.
Thank you.
Should I go?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, please go ahead, Rowena.
The first question was our current contribution, was it?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I suppose I see the Eco Dharma Project as one of my, you know, because alongside my personal lifestyle, which is sort of has a lot of similarities with David in the sense of being vegan and a lot of accessing a lot of food locally. We put as a family, put a lot of work into, effort into buying local food, organic, wherever possible, low on packaging and all of this sort of thing. We've also done a lot of adaptations in our house with biomass boiler and solar panels and insulation and all those sorts of things. Cycle as much as we can. We do have a car, but it's shared between 3 of us. And anyway, car is a bit of a, you know, anyway, we try to be careful how we use it. And a bit like Sylvia, we all have recycled clothes and, you know, hardly ever buy any new clothes, all of that sort of thing. Anyway, beside that, the Eco Dharma Project is what I, you know, put a lot of energy into that. And, you know, so at the moment, we've been doing a lot about the tree planting program, and it's a lovely way of connecting with people and giving people sort of practical way to engage with things, you know, and feel they're doing something. So there's a lot of positive things that come from that. And nice networking with other organisations and faith groups and, you know, other networks. So I think that's my main current, I've forgotten what current contribution, was that the right words, in terms of lifestyle and work. And then was it how I could improve? What was that, the next question? The things we could improve?
Prevents you.
What prevents me from improving? Sometimes seeing how to, I mean, as a family, we're aware that we still use too much plastic, for example. So trying to find ways to minimize that. That's one of the things we haven't, I would say we haven't cracked too much plastic. There's something about balance in life, so that to make sure, so all the other aspects in life to get the right balance, not to get depleted, that sort of thing, if that's the way to say it. I think actually if I refine that a bit more, well, partly there is the personal balance, but there's also actually more significant than that. It's how to find a way to challenge things sufficiently. What's the right mechanism to use? So with the Eco Dharma Project, it's relatively, I'd say, straightforward in that a lot of people, I mean, I know tonight isn't representative, I'm sorry, the number is so low, but generally, I think there's reasons for it that we've discussed, but generally people have been enthusiastic about the project, and, you know, we've had a lot of affirmation, and like with the tree planting, I have more volunteers than I have trees to plant. You know, there's more people want to be engaged in it and they're pleased about it. But the thing I find difficult is understanding how to approach people who haven't made those changes, who aren't so aware, or who find it difficult to, you know, they can see logically it needs to change, but don't actually want to make the changes quickly enough. I feel underskilled in knowing how to approach those difficulties. So, yeah, lack of skills in persuading people who aren't already very motivated to
That's
change.
a huge challenge.
Yes, it has come up. Yeah, it come up in different ways, but that's. Is that the? I've lost the track. Is that the main? Are those the main question? Have I answered all the questions? But that, anyway.
The last point was what would help you. So it's yeah.
Oh, what would help me? Oh, well, things like this. I mean, I find it very, very nurturing and nourishing, linking up with like-minded people and talking through exactly these sorts of things, getting other people's experience, ideas. And just it's very nurturing and nourishing. I think, Sylvia, did you mention that, about linking up with other groups and finding out what's happening? It's inspiring, really. So that's definitely helps.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's the same for me. I mean, I really believe that it's so important to act in communities. And I totally agree with what you said, Sylvia, that sometimes we just don't have the time to look after all the information. But then sometimes it's helpful to be in communities with other people because we might get advice or people, we might get good advice. So I really believe that there's a lot of benefit in living in communities, and I'm so enthusiastic about my new work, the job that I've been doing ever since September, because I'm working with a lot of young people. So I'm learning a lot from being together with young people every day. Many of them are very much engaged in Fridays for Futures organization, and I see what a commitment they bring. And then I think, oh wow, if these young people are able to bring this commitment, what should I do? I mean, I'm much more settled in life than they are, and then I have even more responsibilities. So I very much believe that in communities there is a long way to go ahead. My personal blind spot is food, because it took me, like with David, it took me a long time to transition to give up eating meat. I very rarely eat meat, but it was a long transition because at the beginning I gave up too quickly. So I also experienced problems. But now my next challenge lies ahead of me, because I really think it would be good at some point to move on to become vegan. Because in the end, I substituted meat with a lot of dairy products and eggs and cheese and so. And I'm aware that this is not it's better than eating meat, but still it's not where I want to be. But then there come my vital lies. Oh, I might be lacking protein. I might not get the good food. I might only eat processed food. So there's some development work for me to do. So I know that there is some work to be done. But then the other thing is creating mental room for these changes in our life. Because of course, these changes are not easy. And we all have busy lives, and we all are stressed, and we are all under pressure. And I think it's important to be gentle with changes, and so keep the determination to want to do the changes, but at the same time be gentle with ourselves and not pressure. It's like it was so good when you said that having too rapid transition just brings the risk to be frustrated and fall back into old habits.
That's right. Yeah, we don't have to do it overnight. No. Yeah.
Right. So thank you for these contributions and for these reflections, and it's very interesting for me also to hear what other people are doing. That's a field of never ending to learn. So before we move on to the next topic, I would like to lead you in a brief meditation. And this meditation is a meditation by Ayakema, who was a Theravada nun, originally from Germany. And it's in a meditation on the 4 elements. So I will ask you to sit comfortably and take a meditation posture which is comfortable for you, that you can hold for the next 10 minutes or so. And then reconnect with your breath before we start. We've been doing a lot of discussions and talks, so it's good to take a few breaths. Breathe to slow down the mind. And everything in the world consists of the 4 primary elements: earth, fire, the water, and the air. And if we learn to recognize these elements inside ourselves, we will recognize that these elements are also around us, and that our constitution in terms of these elements is precisely the same as everything that is around us. And in this way, reflecting on this equal presence of the elements in any one of us and in all elements around us, we can overcome the feeling of separation between us and the environment around us and realize the unity of existence and how there is no real separation between us and the environment and the beings around us. And when we talk about the element, the earth element is our body, the ground, whatever has solidity. The fire element is temperature, warm or cold, and the capacity to digest and eat. The water element is not just water, but all body fluids. But the water element is also the connecting elements, the element that connects all things together. And the air element refers to the breathing, but also to wind and to any movement. Because whenever we move, even the subtlest movement, we are dispersing air and creating new movement. So these are the four elements that we're going to explore. And we start with the earth element. Just try and feel the solidity of our own body. We can touch our hands, our knees, we can feel our teeth in our mouth. Maybe we close the eye and feel the pressure of the eyelids. And then we move our focus of attention to our cushion. And we see how the element of solidity of our body connects with the solidity of the cushion or the seat that we're sitting on. Or the floor beneath our feet or our mat. And we just let these two earth elements, our body and our cushion or seat, merge. The same earth element. Now imagine we walk outside, in which every step we feel the earth element under our feet, and we merge the earth element of our feet with the earth element of the floor that we're walking on. And the earth beneath us. We can imagine to walk out to a tree, lean back against the trunk of the tree, that the earth element of our body merge with the earth element of the tree. There is no separation. We might continue our imaginary walk, come upon a stream, and we put our hand in the water of the stream, and we feel the water solidity. So even in water, there is an earth element that we can connect with. And even if we look at the sky, at the clouds, even the clouds have their own solidity. So even the clouds contain our earth element that can connect with the earth element of our body. So let's just feel for a moment this connection, the earth element. As a next step, let's look at the fire element. Let's focus our awareness on the temperature of our body. Some parts of our body might be warm, some other parts may be cold. What is the temperature of the cushion that we're sitting on? Again, let the fire element of your body merge with the fire element of the cushion. And in the same way as before, imagine walking out the door, going outside, leaning against a tree, touching the water. Feel the temperature of the earth, the water, and the sunshine that you meet. And let them merge with the fire element in your own body. And for the last couple of minutes, try to do the same imagination exercise with the elements of water and of air. See if you can identify the water element in your body fluids, but also the connecting element, what brings things together, and how this connects with the water element of whatever is around you, the cushion. If you walk out, if you imagine to walk outside, the environment outside, whatever you encounter. Imagine yourself navigating the world of the external elements and see how they connect to your internal elements. And as last element, think of breathing, wind, movement, how the air element inside your body connects with the air element of whatever is around you. So let's bring this meditation to a close. Open our eyes if we have them closed. Come back to the present moment. And let's keep in mind that this meditation helps us to recognize that all phenomena are composed and dependent upon the mutual interaction and the mutual merging. And in the end, we're all dependent arising upon combinations of elements, not just that, but also, especially for the relationship with our environment, it's very important to keep elements in mind. Thank you for joining me. So then we have, I had anticipated at the beginning, I had anticipated that there is a second path that it's important for us, especially as engaged Buddhists, to follow, and that's what I call the Mahayana perspective to environmental and sustainability challenges that we face. So we said we need to find individual answers, but we also need to take into consideration the problem of all the beings around us. And that's why the title of this talk was called Sustainability Will Not Happen Without Great Compassion. And this is a very important point, that we need to take into consideration global challenges. So not just our everyday boundaries, but look beyond that. And for me, very interesting was a conference that was held in May 2017 at the United Nations. It was the first United Nations conference on emotional intelligence. And the opening talk was given by United Nations officers who said achieving the 17 Sustainable Development Goals requires a global mindset that prioritizes the well-being of others as much as our own. I found it very impressive. Officer of the United Nations, so was not involved in any form of spirituality, but the United Nations are acknowledging the need for us to cooperate at a global level. They are emphasizing the need to shift our mindset, and this is why they invited scientists like Daniel Goleman. And the point that Daniel Goleman made, the heart of emotional intelligence is develop our personal and global agency, developing the firm belief that within ourselves we have the possibility of increasing our capacity to positively impact the life of others, which is nothing else than the idea that we have unlimited potential and unlimited capacity to improve not just our situation, but the situation of all beings around us. This is the point when I heard that struck immediately to me, and as in a Mahayana context, it was so familiar to me, and it was just wonderful to hear that. And the next video I would like to share with you is illustrating the idea of not leaving no one behind. So the United Nations has developed this promise that we need to fulfill to leave no one behind. And I will share now my video to show you, my screen to show you this video. I hope it will work now better than last time. And a second. So. Give me a moment. No, I have to stop sharing. And now again, yes. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, hopefully you also hear the sound very soon. Can you hear the sound?
Yes.
was refugee in Pakistan, I was refugee in Iran, I was refugee in Dubai, and now I'm a refugee in France.
Les gens, quand tu es handicapé, ils n'essaient même pas de voir ce que tu es capable de faire, mais ils te jugent à travers ton handicap.
Haberme vendido no fue una buena idea.
यहाँ की लड़कियां कुछ नहीं कर सकती।
लाइट रहे उजियार रहे हमरो बाल बचा उजियार रहे
Agamami fumidam bini sapnami bem mashkalnami kharta.
Porque se todo mundo tivesse alimento em casa, ela podia raciocinar. Então, poderia ser pobre, mas teria a inteligência na cabeça para poder sair dali.
Parce que na mukil mutu azwana mission na onzamba tindelai. Ngape na za mukil po na mission na ngai me nzambe ndayebi.
I've left my husband to be with a woman, and for me that's a huge step in my country as an African woman to do that. I do have a strong voice and I'm strong as a woman speaking for myself.
Nous devons dire au monde que nous existons, que vous êtes là. Et je suis sûr qu'aucune misère, aucune pauvreté extrême n'est pas une fatalité. On peut la combattre.
Afaka ihany fa mba tsy hitovy amin'le hoe toerana nisy atsony zany fa mba lasa ambonimbony kokoa zany izy dia tantsony reny dia famihina teo zany any Teliana.
I like this video because it's so powerful. It's I find it deeply powerful, and but even more powerful than the video itself is the promise. This leave no one behind promise. Every goal must be met for everyone. Every person has a fair opportunity in life, no matter who or where they are. Reach the furthest behind first. And every person counts. And when I first heard it, I thought, oh, okay, yeah, that's nice theory. But then when I started reflecting upon it, what does it mean? Every person counts. Every goal must be reached for every person. And then I had this intuition that in the end, achieving this goal, saying we should not leave anyone behind, every person count, is just a secular correlation to our bodhisattva vows. It's nothing else. When we take the vows of our bodhisattvas, when we vow to save all sentient beings, it's that. It's precisely that. Having this feeling that we need this strong intention to develop great compassion towards all beings, regardless they are close to us, they are far from us, they are related to us, they are not related to us. We need to develop this compassion towards being, the feelings that we are all the same in wanting to have happiness and act upon it. And this is precisely what we need to achieve if we want to achieve sustainability, not just as a personal level, but at a global level. So this is the shift we need to do from an individual path to a global path. Just like when we focus on with our Buddhist practice, we move from a middling scope to great scope of practice. And this is really an essential point. But on our path to do that, it's so easy to be discouraged. And there's this beautiful story of Jamyang of how he got discouraged by doubting that he would ever be able to save and help all sentient beings. And this is how he got 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes in order to save all sentient beings. And even for us, discouragement is a constant pitfall. And discouragement can manifest itself in many different ways. Of course, it can manifest in the way that we say, oh, anyway, we cannot save everyone. It's not possible to help everyone on this planet. Or we might develop a cynical attitude, or reinforcing our blind spot, developing vital lies to tell ourselves we don't really need to question everything. And everything we do, and think will be okay. People will help themselves in some way. And I think it's really important for us to not fall into this discouragement. And the first thing is to see that this discouragement is very much rooted in our limited sense of self that we have nowadays. Our normal way of perceiving ourselves as separated from other beings, as different from other beings, and with a limited human potential. And this is our limited perception of ourselves is what creates this discouragement. Whereas by developing great compassion and developing a strong determination of bodhicitta to help all sentient beings, we can choose to develop courage and confidence to help all sentient beings and act upon that. And again, like with bodhicitta, the most important thing is really have a determination to help all sentient beings. And I think this is an essential point. This is why, for me, it's so important to include our practice of compassion in our commitment to sustainability, because it's very, very easy to get discouraged and to get judgmental towards other beings. And personally, the practice that I find very helpful in order to overcome my own discouragement when it assails me, and it does at regular times, there are 2 points. The first is remembering our unlimited potential, remembering our Buddha nature. Remember that we have this potential which is unlimited. And then the practice of the 4 immeasurables. The 4 immeasurables are very, very powerful meditation, which we can work on to develop our capacity for interconnection with all sentient beings. And the 4 immeasurables are originally included in the Pali in the Pali canons, and they are in the Theravada tradition. They are practiced as practices of the concentrations. So they're concentration meditations that build upon each other, starting from love, compassion, joy, and culminate in equanimity, and seeing and developing an equanimous mental state towards all sentient beings. But in the Mahayana perspective, the 4 immeasurables have an even larger dimension, because the 4 immeasurables connect our practice of bodhicitta and with our practice of wisdom realizing emptiness. Because we will also only be able to realize the 4 immeasurable states if we have the wisdom realizing emptiness, if we realize that there is no separation, that there is no difference between ourselves and the self of others. And there is this beautiful image in the Lamrim Chemo where Lama Tsongkhapa says, it's like when we sit on the top of one mountain, and then we sit on the top of a mountain and look to the mountain opposite of us, and we say, this mountain, that mountain. And then we go on top of the other mountain and we say, this mountain, that mountain. And it's really just labels. And the same is with our notion of self, myself, other. This distinction is pure convention. And it's important to keep the sense of connectedness with others. And I feel that this very strongly comes up in the practice of the four immeasurables. And in the and it's also important to say that in the Mahayana tradition, the four immeasurables, the practice of the four immeasurables starts with equanimity. So equanimity really comes as the basis for building up the four boundless qualities of the heart. So first we develop equanimity by seeing that we are all equal in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, and that all beings, no exception, are equal in that. And on the basis of that, combined with our understanding of the selflessness of ourselves and of all beings, we can develop immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy. And in this way, by practicing the four immeasurables as a package, alternating the four, developing all four of them, we really have the antidotes against discouragement. And we really have the possibility in our meditation practice to reinforce this quality that will then fight against the discouragement that we experience, we might experience occasionally in our everyday life, in our engagement for the sustainability. And so, yes, I would like to conclude. It's 9:10. I would conclude with a small meditation on equanimity, again about 10 minutes. And this is a meditation that I took over from Alan Wallace. The big emphasis on the four immeasurables is something that I learned from Alan Wallace during my training for cultivating emotional balance. Alan puts great emphasis of the need of developing these qualities of our heart. And this is why I took this meditation from him, which I would like to guide you through right now for the next 10 minutes or so, before we come to the close, slowly to the close of this session. And so again, I would invite you to take a comfortable sitting position for meditation. And we will start by settling the body in a natural state. So we settle our posture, and we take a moment to dwell, to reflect on the benefits of a quality like equanimity, the benefits that it could bring to the world. We can remember the words of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, whether one is rich or poor, educated or illiterate, religious or non-believing, man or woman, black, white, brown, we are all the same. Physically, emotionally, and mentally, we are all equal. We all share the basic need for food, shelter, safety, and love. We all aspire to happiness, and we all want to avoid suffering. Each of us has hopes, worries, fears, and dreams, and we all want the best for our family and our loved ones. At a fundamental level, religion, culture, language make no difference. And for our survival as a human species, it is essential that we remain in touch with this basic part of our human nature, which is all shared among us. And the inspiration of these words by His Holiness, settle our body in a peaceful state. We let go of any tension. Settle our breathing in a natural state, letting our breathing flow freely in and out. And we settle our mind by releasing all concerns about the past and future and being just in the present. From this state of relaxation and awareness, combined with awareness, we develop awareness for the network of relationships around us and worldwide. And within this network of relationship, we pick up a person that comes to our mind. It might be a person that we know personally, a person that we have a good relationship, or a person that we have a bad relationship. Just focus on this specific person. And take the time to recognize that this person is a living being just like ourselves. They have a body, they have a mind, they have thoughts, feelings, emotions. Angry, happy, afraid, just like us. They experience pain in the body, pain in their mind. We recognize the fact that the well-being of this person is equally as important as our own well-being. No difference. And while we hold this recognition, we breathe in and think, may you be free from suffering and its causes. And when we breathe out, may you realize happiness in these causes. You can do this for the next couple of minutes. Breathing in, may you be free from suffering. Breathing out, may you realize happiness. And when we have done that, we may reach out to another person out of the network of relationship that we are involved in. Again, we focus on a particular person and we recognize that their well-being is just as important as ours. And again, we breathe in, thinking, may you be free from suffering, and breathe out, may you have happiness. And just continue doing so in your own rhythm and expanding to more people as you feel comfortable with. And before we bring this meditation session to a close, take another moment to just rest in awareness, focusing on this equanimous quality of our mind and our even-hearted concern of equanimity. Just rest in awareness, feeling it. And as if we feel ready, we can open our eyes and come back in this virtual room that we're in. So thank you. Thank you for joining me in this meditation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, and that was it. We have 10 minutes, and I would like to use this time for discussion or for questions or whatever you want to share about your experience or tonight, and any thoughts or ideas you have or questions, of course.
Yeah, I mean, a thought that occurs to me is actually, yeah, I mean, I hadn't really made that connection as strongly as the way that you expressed it with that video. And yes, it is very powerful. And yes, it is exactly the Bodhisattva vow. And hadn't really occurred to me before in such a clear way. Nothing else will solve this problem. It is that universal concern, the Bodhisattva attitude, needs to be something that the society as a whole embodies. And so I think, you know, as people, I think we're all following some form of Mahayana Buddhism here, it kind of puts a very special, I don't mean it in a kind of heavy sense, but responsibility that, or opportunity or possibility, you know, that we maybe are not, we find it difficult to actually acknowledge the importance of the work that we are doing specifically. You know, I mean, of course, we shouldn't think it's just limited to people who carry that label of Buddhist, because that's not true at all. But it shines a light for me on what we are doing has a really special importance for the world, you know, and I think it's helpful for us to actually, although it might be hard to open our mind to that reality, I think that it is a reality, and we should own it, and we should recognize that what we're trying to do here, there's just 4 of us tonight, you know, and the message went out to many, many people. Not many people came here. So of course people are doing their own practice, or they're doing other things, but you know, I think we actually have to shout a bit to say, hey, you know, not only as environmentalists, Buddhism is important, but as Buddhists, environmentalism is important. You know, we have to actually shout a bit to the Buddhists and also to the people who are, you know, not understanding. Because I think, you know, some environmentalists kind of don't perhaps recognize this dimension and feel that somehow, oh, it's too urgent, it's too difficult, we can't wait for everybody to have an enlightened attitude, we have to do it a different way through technology or through some kind of, you know, authoritarian measures. Well, that's no good either. It's both. It's eco and dharma we need. I think I just feel really reaffirmed by everything you've said, Francesca, that Eco Dharma is something incredibly important and significant, and let's recognize that and have confidence in what we're setting out to do, and say, hey, you know. And so we need to work on our marketing as well.
There's a lot of work we need to do, but you're right. I mean, I don't know if you have. That's an organization founded by Bhikkhu Bodhi. I mean, he's a Theravada monk.
You just said the name again.
His name is Bhikkhu Bodhi. He's famous as a translator, actually, but he's also very engaged and founded an organization called Buddhist Global Relief. And he said he had this idea of creating this. I mean, the Buddhist Global Relief works for programs for food programs and humanitarian support. And he said he had this idea of founding this Buddhist organization because after the tsunami in Asia, he was in Asia at the time of the tsunami, and he said all religions came with their own rescue organizations to help, and just the Buddhists didn't have any. Mm-hmm. And this very much struck him, and he said, okay, then I'm going to found one and start one, a rescue organization, humanitarian support program. So it's a beautiful program that he launched, but it's really interesting, this observation that other religions are very active. And in a way, we Buddhists need, I agree with you, David, we need to start shouting and make ourselves be heard in the world, because otherwise, if we practice compassion only on the cushion, that's good, a lot of merits, no doubt, but that's not enough, certainly not in these difficult times. Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. And I'm very happy to see all these movements of engaged Buddhism that are starting around Eco Dharma. So there's many movements coming up, and then again, for me, my constant source of inspiration is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I mean, he tirelessly advocates the issue of sustainability and environmental action. He's tireless in that, and it's just a source of continuous inspiration.
Yeah. Be very nice to hear what everybody else thinks.
I mean, I've just found that very powerful. I mean, it's just such a beautiful weaving together of the concept of the Bodhisattva path and environmental path, and it deepens it and expands it. And that, you know, the reminder about the unlimited potential, our unlimited potential. Mm-hmm. So important, because that you can, it's very hard not to be discouraged, isn't it? It's very hard not to be overwhelmed, but to be reminded of our infinite capacity is very helpful. So, yeah, thank you. It's really stayed with me. Will stay with me.
Thank you.
I'll go and get the book, the Daniel Goleman book about ecological intelligence, because I think one of the things that I've been struggling with is sort of like analysing what I need to say and do to people, I mean, to really analyse it and sort of say, you know, well, you know, thinking about sort of the niche and the carrying capacity and, like, you know, like the ecological stuff that I need to tell people. And I think this idea of ecological intelligence and the experiential knowing of it is really important for me to remember that, because then with that as my foundation, as well as the knowledge, but not letting the analysis sort of take over, because then I'm not going to reach people anywhere near as well as if that knowledge is experiential and you know, and coming from that different place, of that sort of, you know, analytical place. So yeah, that's useful, that that book, I will go and read it.
Yeah. Thank you. That, and I think that is really important. You know, I think we need to think a lot more about how do we communicate to people that don't, you know, I mean, one problem is people that don't get it, that there is an ecological crisis, but that is less and less the problem. More and more, the problem is people do know that it's a crisis, but they're not changing their behavior, or they're not becoming active in it. And maybe they can't because they're too overwhelmed by other things, but maybe they could actually, if they were able to somehow shift their perceptions somehow. And we can't, you're right, Sylvia, we can't shift people's perceptions with information and analysis. It has to be coming from the heart to, you know, we have to find ways that we can help people to tune in to their own potential, their own power and ability to do something that's meaningful. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Francesca. Really great.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful evening with you. So thank you for taking the time. And then even if it was just a small group, I was delighted to be with you tonight. So thank you. And before we close, I would take just 1 minute to dedicate. Just take a minute to dedicate, to reconnect with all beings and focus on our interconnectedness among all of us, and dedicate any merits that we have created by being here, by sharing our thought, by engaging with each other. May all this positive energy we generated give us the strength to always believe in our unlimited potential to benefit others, and may this contribute to fulfill the visions of our precious teachers. First and foremost, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, our constant source of inspiration, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and all our other teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much
for joining us as well. It's really lovely to meet you, and we hope we see you again. Okay.
Definitely, and thank you for hosting this, David. Thank you very much. And if you join in for the teaching of Venerable Robina and for the Lama Chopa tomorrow, then I will see you there, because I will join you there.
Yeah, okay. Yes, maybe see you there, but we're going to meet next week anyway, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah, we definitely are. So we will go on with
and
our
we'll
Eco
talk
Dharma
about
activity.
doing a follow-on, because I think if we can, Paloma, I can't tell you how enthusiastic she was to support.
Oh, wow.
So this is our European coordinator for our organization. So she's very keen to bring it beyond the UK to the European level. So hopefully we could take this as a practice run and have one maybe with many more people, you know, in a few months.
Wonderful.
Okay.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.